Once upon a time, there was a man who had everything but warmth. His name was Maxwell Ellington III. To the world, he was a legend, a trillionaire investor, a pioneer of precision engineering, the architect of silent empires. He lived in a sprawling glass estate perched on the cliffs of Belmont Hills, where the sun never touched him directly, only filtered through automated blinds and tempered glass. Inside his house, everything worked on time. Lights dimmed on cue, meals arrived via conveyor hatches, doors opened with whispers. The walls knew when to silence, and silence, above all, was sacred. His twin children, Noah and Hope, lived there too. They were 7 years old, silent, still, untouched by the frenzy of the outside world. They did not speak, did not laugh, did not weep. They blinked and breathed and followed their scheduled therapies like shadows. Their presence felt more like memory than life. Maxwell had built the house after their mother, Celeste, passed away. He did not attend the funeral. He was in Singapore negotiating the merger that made him the youngest trillionaire alive. When he returned, he built the mansion, a house of precision, of automation, of control. But Celeste had not been a precise woman. She was warmth and chaos and lullabies in the kitchen. She would sing to empty hallways, write little notes in spiral notebooks, and hide them under cereal boxes for the children to find. She wore aprons with embroidered sunflowers and believed in touch that healed, touch that lingered. Celeste didn't believe in silence, and so silence became the only thing Maxwell allowed after she was gone. He cycled through 28 nannies in 3 years. Most left without saying goodbye. Some cried, a few sent letters never opened. But one day, a woman named Mariam arrived. She was not on his list. She didn't have a degree in child psychology or trauma therapy. She didn't come from the agency that specialized in nonverbal cognitive developmental support. She had never read a manual on children at all, but she carried something in her voice. Maxwell hadn't spoken to her directly. All hires went through the estate's silent system, a tablet on a podium by the door. A black car brought her. The AI opened the gate. Mariam stepped in wearing a faded cardigan and a scarf knotted like a memory. She smelled faintly of cassia bark and rain. Her shoes were worn, her hands rough like someone who did her own scrubbing. She looked around and whispered, "This house is starving." No one answered. The AI led her to her quarters. The children were asleep when she arrived. For 3 days, she said nothing. She cleaned. She swept hallways no one walked. She folded laundry that never wrinkled. She sang under her breath, not full songs, but pieces, hums, breathy notes that trailed off like birds unsure of the wind. On the 4th morning, Maxwell saw her for the first time. He was on his way to the East Wing, checking on a malfunctioning temperature control panel. He passed the wide central hall with the skylight dome, and there she was. She didn't see him. She was barefoot. She was dancing, the kind of dance that isn't performed. It came from her ribs, her elbows, her breath. It was soft and foolish and private. She moved in a lazy circle near the glass wall, where sunlight pooled. The mop in her hand became a partner. Her lips curved, eyes closed, smile quiet. Behind her, little Hope was watching. Maxwell froze. He was not angry. Not exactly. Just interrupted. The air felt wrong. There was movement in a place that had been still, warmth in a room that was meant for silence. Mariam turned slowly and saw him. She didn't flinch. She dipped the mop into the bucket and said softly, "Morning, sir." No apology, no stammer, no explanation for the dance. Maxwell said nothing. He stared at her bare feet, at the child, at the sun. Then he turned and walked away. Later that day, he instructed the system to disable hallway surveillance between 8 and 10 a.m. in the West Quadrant. He didn't say why. The next morning, Mariam danced again. Hope watched again. And Maxwell stood, hidden behind the reinforced glass of his study, watching both of them. This time, he noticed something else. Hope's fingers moved. Just a little, one hand twitching against her thigh, as if her body remembered something her mind did not. That night, Mariam left a spiral notebook on the children's shared play table. The pages were blank except for the first one. It said, "Draw something warm." Hope scribbled orange circles with green smudges. Noah tore out 3 pages and folded them into quiet cranes. Maxwell saw the drawings and blinked, noticed his breath. On the 5th day, it rained. Real rain, not the mist-controlled irrigation system that fed the courtyard moss. Mariam opened the playroom windows just a crack and let the petrichor inside. She whispered to the children, "Smell that? That's the smell of God taking a breath." Hope giggled. A sound. Soft, startled, but real. Maxwell was in the hallway when he heard it. He stopped walking, stopped breathing. In his mind, for just 1 second, he saw Celeste, standing barefoot near the sink, singing to the radio, humming lullabies and laughing because Hope had just put syrup on the cat. He left the hallway. He went to the farthest room, his wife's old studio, locked, untouched. He unlocked it. Dust greeted him like grief. He stood there for a long time. The next morning he instructed the AI, "Move the maid's quarters closer to the children's room." That evening, Mariam tucked Hope in with a song soft, off-key, full of breath and old lyrics. Maxwell stood in the hallway, listening. He didn't cry. But he didn't walk away either. Outside, the rain tapped gently on the glass. Inside, silence no longer ruled, it waited. Because something new had entered the house, and it moved with bare feet. And it danced. It begins before sunrise. Maxwell sits in his office, awake long before the world expects him. His fingers hover over a stylus, the smart wall glowing in front of him. Charts, predictions, global stock movement, a list of numbers from Tokyo, another from Frankfurt. But he isn't really reading, because under the constant thrum of his precision life, something has changed. There is a hum in the walls, a warmth in the air. He knows it's her, Mariam. She sweeps with rhythm, wipes down frames with the same patience she uses to listen. She hums lullabies no algorithm can interpret. She leaves blankets with just enough crease for hands to find comfort. And now, the children are watching her, following her. Noah and Hope, his silent twins who once stared through things, now tilt their heads towards sound. Maxwell notices Hope sitting closer to the window lately, waiting for the light that spills across the corridor where Mariam passes. He notices Noah trailing behind her when she waters the houseplants, a shadow learning to become a boy again. And Maxwell doesn't understand it, so he does what men like him do. He calls for proof. He summons Dr. Landon, the child development specialist who charges $50,000 per week and speaks only in data. Dr. Landon arrives by helicopter, briefcase in hand, jacket stiff, hair sculpted like certainty. Maxwell watches through the mirrored glass while Landon meets the children in the therapy room. They do not look at him. They do not react to his voice, his iPad, or his stimulus response cards. They sit. Still. Landon frowns. Maxwell clenches his jaw. After 3 hours, Landon declares, "No measurable improvement. Suggest continued, pharmacological and stimulus-based regimen." Maxwell nods, but his fingers drum slowly on the chair. That night, he watches from the hidden hallway camera feed. The time is 9:12 p.m. Mariam kneels beside Hope's bed. The room is dim, warm, a little messy, soft toys arranged like a gentle army of quiet. Hope is under the blanket. Her eyes are open, but her body is at peace. Mariam begins to hum. Not a full lullaby, just the bones of one. A tune Celeste used to sing. Maxwell knows it. Not because he remembers it clearly, but because something inside his chest twitches when it starts. The tune loops and lingers, slowing with each pass like a heartbeat, learning how to rest. Hope blinks once. Then, without instruction, she reaches out. Her fingers touch Mariam's wrist. Just a brush. Just skin on skin. But it's the first time she's touched someone since her mother died. Maxwell watches the screen like a man watching his own soul remember something. The next morning, he disables all security cameras in the children's wing. He tells no one. At breakfast, Mariam arrives a little late. Her scarf is a brighter shade of yellow today. She greets him with a simple, "Good morning, sir," and no explanation. She begins to prepare the twins' breakfast not from the auto kitchen system, but with her own hands. Toast, egg, a little honey in warm milk. Maxwell watches silently. He notices her hands. Not efficient, not swift, but sure. Hands that do not fear mess. Hands that have held grief. Noah enters the kitchen. Maxwell watches his son hesitate at the threshold, then walk in. He sits beside his sister. And for the first time in 2 years, he does not wait for permission to eat. He picks up a spoon. Maxwell says nothing, but his breath catches in his throat like a child who's forgotten how to cry. Later that day, he opens Celeste's old notebooks. They're still in her studio on the shelves, in drawers, in the yellow box she once used to hide cookies. The pages are messy, lines run crooked, doodles everywhere, but in between them, Maxwell finds something else. Letters. To him. Most are unfinished. One begins, "If anything ever happens to me," and trails off into a sketch of Hope's sleeping face. Another ends with Max, "Remember to let them hear music. Even if it hurts." He shuts the notebook gently and leaves it on his desk. That evening, Mariam walks past his office. He doesn't mean to open the door, but his hand does. She pauses. He clears his throat. "Where did you learn that lullaby?" She tilts her head. "I didn't learn it, it came." He frowns. "It came?" "Yes," she smiles gently. "Some songs live inside the walls." Maxwell stares at her. For a second, something tight in his chest shifts just a little. He steps back and closes the door. But the next morning, there's music playing softly in the hallway. Not loud, not disruptive. Just a melody, barely there, woven into the hum of the house. No one claims responsibility. The AI logs show no digital input, but it plays again the next morning. And the one after that, a soft, quiet invitation. On the seventh day, Maxwell watches Noah reach for Mariam's hand. No hesitation, just trust. And Hope hums a note while drawing a picture of their garden. A real note, a sound. Maxwell sits in the corner of the living room, hidden behind the half wall, listening. He cannot explain what is happening. He does not try. He just listens. Outside, the wind moves the trees slowly. Inside, something warmer than control begins to take root. Not order, not silence, something else, something alive. The sound of rain returns. Not the kind that dances on glass politely, but the kind that aches falling in sheets against the long bay windows, humming through the roof like breath on the skin of the world. It wakes Maxwell before the system chimes. He doesn't check his schedule. He listens. Somewhere, faintly, there is laughter. His breath stills. Not loud, not wild, just soft, like a giggle caught by surprise. He slips on his house slippers and walks barefoot for the first time in years, the carpet unfamiliar under his soles. Down the hallway, toward the playroom. He doesn't call for the AI, doesn't trigger the lights. When he rounds the corner, he sees them. Mariam, Noah, Hope. In the middle of the floor, lit by a small yellow lamp and framed by window light smeared with rain, they sit cross-legged on a worn rug. Mariam has wrapped her scarf around Hope's eyes like a blindfold. Noah is holding a feather. They're playing a game of senses. Guess what touched you? Hope smiles every time she's wrong. Noah laughs when she guesses right. There are notebooks around them, markers uncapped, a candle flickering inside a clean jam jar. Maxwell stands there, unseen, for a long time. The house does not complain. The silence does not return. Later that day, the intercom buzzes. A car is arriving. Maxwell forgot. Dr. Sandrine Bellamy, the new behavioral specialist flown in from Geneva, referred by a prince, costs more per hour than most people earn in a year. She steps into the foyer with a clipboard and the smell of polished leather. Her eyes scan the hall like a battlefield strategist. "Where are the children?" she asks. Maxwell hesitates. "In the West Wing. I'll begin the diagnostic immediately." He doesn't stop her. He doesn't follow her. But the children don't come to dinner. Hours pass. Mariam enters the dining room with an odd tightness in her jaw. Maxwell notices. She asks them to repeat tasks, Mariam says carefully. Over and over, with cold hands, with strange lights. Hope cried. His jaw sets. I told her to stop. I asked her to give them space. Maxwell rises slowly. He doesn't shout. He never has. But something in his chest begins to uncoil. He walks to the therapy room. Dr. Bellamy is sitting, perfectly composed, jotting notes. The children are on opposite ends of the room, silent, pale, still. He watches for a second, then says, "Leave." She looks up. "Excuse me?" "Leave." Mr. Ellington. These children are in a fragile cognitive. Leave my house." He doesn't blink. She stares at him. Then she stands, folds her notes, walks out. That night, the house is quieter than usual, but not cold. Maxwell finds Mariam in the kitchen, making tea. He doesn't ask. She pours him a cup anyway. They sit. He sips. She doesn't speak. Outside, the rain thickens. After a moment, he says, "They used to smile more. When Celeste was here," Mariam nods. He swallows. "She knew how to hear them, without words." "She still does," Mariam whispers. "Some women don't leave. They become the air." He looks up. Her eyes are steady. Then, almost afraid to ask, he says, "How are they with you?" She looks down at her cup. "They're not healed," she says softly, "but they're safe." Silence again, but not sharp, not distant. This one breathes. The next morning, Mariam finds something on the breakfast counter. A spiral notebook. On the first page, Maxwell's handwriting. "Let them play today. Let them feel the rain." She smiles, and she does. Noah runs barefoot across the marble patio, arms open wide as the downpour covers him. Hope spins in circles, face to the sky. Mariam joins them, her scarf soaked, her laughter uncontained. And behind the window, Maxwell watches. He doesn't move, but in his chest, something ancient finally exhales. The house does not beep, it does not alert, it does not correct. It lets them be. And for the first time in a very long time, the man who built a world of silence begins to wish it would never be quiet again. Mornings begin differently now, not with systems waking the house, but with Hope's tiny footsteps padding down the hall. She carries a folded drawing each morning, something new. A cloud with wings, a bird with stars for eyes, a woman with a yellow scarf and warm hands. She leaves them on Maxwell's desk, never stays to see if he reads them. He does. He doesn't just read them, he studies them, fingers lightly tracing the crayon marks like a blind man learning Braille for the first time. In one drawing, 3 figures hold hands under a rain cloud, but only 2 have faces. He stares at the blank one. Later that day, he opens his closet and pulls out a coat he hasn't worn in years. Wool, heavy. It still smells like Celeste's favorite cologne, the one she used to spray on his collar before every trip. He puts it on, and for no reason at all, walks into the garden. Mariam is there with the children. Hope is showing Noah how to dig with a wooden spoon. There are small pots lined up on the edge of the planter, each holding a hopeful seed. He doesn't interrupt, just stands by the pillar, watching. After a while, Mariam glances up. Their eyes meet. She doesn't say anything, but her gaze tells him something has changed. He nods once. That evening, he finds her in the laundry room, folding small socks. He pauses at the doorway. "I want to ask you something." She looks up. He doesn't sit, but his voice softens. "How did you know what they needed?" She folds the last sock, places it in the basket. "Because once," she says gently, "I needed it too." She doesn't elaborate. He doesn't ask. But that night, he looks her up in the system. There's nothing. No resume, no previous employer, no medical files, no references, only her name. A single line submitted manually into the AI. He checks the gate logs. No signature. She simply arrived. The next morning, he asks her quietly, "Where did you come from?" Mariam shrugs, tying her scarf. "From where people leave when the world gets too loud." He almost smiles, but he doesn't. Not yet. Later, he finds Noah sitting at the edge of the piano room. The piano is untouched, covered in dust. Celeste used to play on Sundays. The children would lie under it like kittens in a den. Maxwell sits beside his son. They don't speak. But after a moment, Noah reaches out and presses one key. C. Then another. E. Then silence again. Maxwell places his hand on top of Noah's, lets it rest there. The boy doesn't pull away. In the hallway, Mariam watches. She doesn't interrupt, just places a spiral notebook quietly on the hallway bench. Later, Maxwell finds it. One sentence. "Some bridges are made of breath, not bricks." He closes the notebook, keeps it on his desk. That evening, a storm rolls in, the real kind. Lightning streaking like cracked glass across the sky, wind curling through the corridor windows. The power flickers once. The AI pauses. Maxwell lights candles himself. He walks through the house with a box of matches and no urgency. The silence is not hollow anymore. It's filled with something alive, sacred, and quietly trembling. He finds Mariam sitting with the twins in the reading room. They're under a blanket, watching the candlelight dance. He sits across from them. For the first time, Mariam speaks without waiting. You're allowed to miss her. The words fall into the room like petals on water. Maxwell's throat tightens. He looks down at his hands. I don't know how. She nods slowly. You're not supposed to. Missing someone isn't a process. It's a presence. He blinks fast. No tears fall. But the storm outside isn't the only one breaking. Hope crawls across the carpet, curls up beside him, head against his arm. Maxwell doesn't move. He can't. He's afraid if he breathes too loud, the moment will disappear. But Mariam simply smiles. You're doing fine. And for the first time in a long, long time, Maxwell believes her. The letter arrives on a Monday. A white envelope, no return address, hand-delivered by a courier who doesn't speak, just nods and leaves. Maxwell finds it on the marble foyer table as he returns from a walk through the garden. He hasn't opened an envelope in years. Everything important comes through encrypted messages and private dashboards. But something about this one, the weight of the paper, the uneven edge of the seal, feels personal. He opens it. It's from Celeste's sister, Miriam Olwen. They haven't spoken since the funeral. The letter is brief. Maxwell, I know about the maid. I know about the changes. I'm coming. I need to see for myself what's going on in that house. I'll be there Friday. He reads it twice. Then again, the word maid burns a hole straight through him, as if Mariam's presence is a problem to be explained. But he doesn't call, doesn't prepare. He just folds the letter and places it inside Celeste's old notebook, beneath the page that says, "Let them hear music, even if it hurts." Friday comes with dry wind and brittle light. Miriam Olwen steps out of a black car with sharp heels and sharper posture. She has the kind of voice that cuts rooms in half. She hugs no one. She doesn't greet the children. She heads straight for Maxwell. I heard there's been progress. Maxwell meets her gaze. Yes, and I heard it's not because of the therapists, not because of your systems. No, it's because of a maid. Maxwell hesitates. Her name is Mariam. Miriam's eyebrows lift slightly. I'd like to meet her. He leads her down the quiet hallway toward the garden room. Mariam is sitting on the floor with Hope, threading dried flowers into a circle. Noah is painting with his fingers yellow sunbursts, blue hills, scattered stars. Mariam looks up and smiles, but she sees something in Miriam Olwen's eyes, something cool, assessing, uninvited. The room changes. The air tightens. You're the one they've been talking about, Miriam says. Mariam nods gently. I didn't expect someone like you. I rarely am, Mariam replies, without offense. Miriam steps closer. You have no credentials, no degree, no certification, no background in behavioral therapy. No, Mariam says softly, only breath and patience. Hope stands and walks to Mariam, wrapping both arms around her middle. Miriam Olwen watches, then turns to Maxwell. This is dangerous, unmeasured. You're allowing your children to form attachments that may not last. What happens when she leaves? Maxwell's voice is quiet. What happens if she doesn't? That night, Miriam Olwen leaves without staying for dinner. She doesn't say goodbye, but she leaves a second letter behind. He finds it on his desk. I still don't trust her. But for the first time in years, I saw light in their eyes. Maybe Celeste would have seen it too. Maxwell folds the letter and adds it to the notebook. The next morning, he walks into the kitchen. Mariam is pouring tea, her movements slow and rhythmic. He sits. I'm sorry for how she spoke to you. Mariam nods. She's grieving. Grief is noisy for some. He looks at her hands. She wears no jewelry. Her fingers are worn, real. She asked a question, he says. What happens if you leave? Mariam looks at him. I don't. The answer is not a promise. It's a truth. Maxwell breathes in. Then, quietly, he opens a drawer near the sink. Inside is Celeste's apron, the one with the embroidered sunflowers. He hands it to Mariam. She takes it gently, ties it around her waist, and begins to hum. Later that day, Noah speaks. One word, a whisper. Mama. It slips out as he's brushing paint on Mariam's arm, copying a flower she drew on his hand earlier. He doesn't flinch when he says it. He just smiles, as if the word had always been there waiting. Mariam doesn't react. Not immediately. She places her hand over his and presses it to her cheek. Hope watches, then says it too. Mama. Maxwell hears it from the hallway. He doesn't run. He doesn't barge in. He stands there, hand against the wall, his chest breaking open. No warning, just air, and a sound that tastes like resurrection. The headlines hit first. Not in tabloids, not in scandal sheets. In clean, respectable print. Trillionaire's children treated by unlicensed woman. Where are the regulations? Maxwell sees it in his private briefing. The story is buried beneath trade news and economic forecasts. But it's there, with Mariam's photo. Grainy, unflattering. Taken from the garden, her face turned, her scarf caught mid-motion. Noah is in the corner of the frame, smiling. Hope is blurred out, deliberately, but not protectively. Maxwell closes the tablet. The house is quiet, too quiet. Mariam is not in the kitchen, not in the hallway, not in the playroom. The children are in their room, holding onto a picture book she left them. Maxwell calls for her. No response. He finds her in the garden, sitting on the edge of the stone planter where the children planted beans weeks ago. Her scarf is in her lap. Her eyes are damp, but she's not crying. He stands behind her, unsure of what to say. "You saw?" she asks without turning. "Yes. They called me a fraud." "You're not. They said I'm manipulating your grief, using the children." "You're not." She lets the silence sit, then whispers, "But what if I leave, Max?" His breath catches. His name. She's never said it before. It lands like a thread tying him to a version of himself he's never known. He walks to her slowly, kneels, meets her eyes. "If you leave," he says, voice low, "this house will forget how to breathe again." She closes her eyes. "But I don't want to hurt them." "You heal them. But if the world keeps watching, I'll make it stop." She shakes her head. "You can't. Not all of it. Not the kind that finds you and twists love into something explainable." He nods. Because he knows. He's done it before. To himself. To Celeste. To everyone he couldn't understand. That night, he makes a decision. He calls a press conference. Not the kind with cameras. Just a written statement. He drafts it by hand. "I am the father of Noah and Hope. I am also the man who lost their mother and tried to replace her with machines. I failed. For 3 years my children were quiet, detached, starving for warmth. Then someone arrived, not with degrees, but with presence, with patience, with faith, and my children began to live again. She is not a therapist, she is not a doctor, she is a woman who carries healing in her breath. Her name is Mariam. She stays." He signs it. His lawyer calls in a panic. Maxwell hangs up. The next day, it runs in every major outlet. He gets calls from investors, board members, journalists. He answers none. But that evening, he walks into the children's room. Hope runs to him. He lifts her. Noah walks to him, holds his leg. Mariam stands near the window. He looks at her. "They know now," he says. "The world. But they won't take this from us." She says nothing, just walks to him, reaches out, touches his hand. The gesture is small, but Maxwell closes his eyes and breathes. That night, he doesn't sleep in the master suite. He takes a blanket and lies on the living room floor with the children curled beside him. Mariam hums from the kitchen. A lullaby, slow, strong, familiar. And for the first time, Maxwell hums along. Not in tune, not in rhythm, but present. And in this house built by grief, something sacred happens. A man once frozen becomes warm. A woman once invisible becomes home. And the children, two once lost stars, shine, steady and silent, beneath the canopy of a lullaby. The doorbell rings, not a system chime, a real bell. Maxwell had it reinstalled last week. He said it was for when the world brings people, not packages. That morning, the world does. When Mariam opens the door, she gasps quietly. It's not a stranger. It's a memory. A man stands there, mid-50s, rain-soaked at the collar, holding a small black bag in one hand. He smells like Riverstone and burnt coffee. "Mariam," he says. Maxwell hears the name and the tone from across the hallway and walks to the door. Mariam's face is calm, but her hands grip the scarf at her neck. Maxwell says nothing. The man speaks again. "I've come to take her home." Hope appears at the end of the corridor, holding a crumpled drawing. Noah trails behind. Mariam speaks softly. "This is not your home anymore." Maxwell looks at her. The man chuckles. It's not a kind sound. You left without a word, Mariam. The sisters thought you were dead. I told them you were running, that you were lost. I wasn't running, she says. I was listening. To what? She closes her eyes. To the voice that said, stay until the house breathes again. Maxwell steps forward. Who are you? The man lifts his chin. Brother Silas. She took vows under my roof. Maxwell looks at Mariam. She nods slightly. Once. Silas continues. She was a sister of mercy. Until she wasn't. She broke her vows, abandoned the orphanage, left children who trusted her. The world thinks she's kind, but I know what she ran from. Maxwell's voice is steel. What did she run to? Silas looks at him. A dead woman's children? Maxwell doesn't flinch. Yes. Hope reaches for Mariam's hand. She takes it, wraps both small fingers inside her palm. Noah walks to Maxwell and tugs his sleeve. Maxwell bends. The boy whispers, she's home. Maxwell rises, looks at Silas. She's not leaving. Silas scoffs. You think you get to choose? I do now, Maxwell says, his voice low, because I stopped choosing silence. I stopped choosing absence. I choose her. My children choose her, and whatever past she carried it here and made us whole. The rain begins again, soft at first. Silas exhales, long and tired. Celeste was my cousin, he mutters. Maxwell's body tightens. I know. I came because I didn't believe what I heard. But now, I do. He looks at Mariam. You look like her, not in the face, in the way you bend toward sorrow without flinching. Mariam nods once. Thank you. Silas steps back. Keep the bag, he says. There's a small book in it. Celeste left it with the chapel. A note on the first page. I think it was meant for you. He turns, walks down the steps, and is gone. No one speaks for a long moment. Then Maxwell picks up the bag and opens it. Inside, wrapped in linen, is a small red notebook. He opens to the first page. It's Celeste's handwriting. If anything ever happens to me, tell the children, I chose them first, every time. And if they ever forget how to laugh, find someone who remembers how. Mariam stands beside him. Hope still clings to her. Maxwell gently hands her the notebook. She presses it to her chest. That night, the fireplace is lit. No instructions, no scheduled warmth, just real fire. Maxwell, Mariam, Noah, and Hope sit on the floor. No music, no therapy, no distraction, just being. Hope draws suns in her notebook. Noah folds the page into a bird. Maxwell leans his head back. Mariam sings quietly, the melody Celeste used to hum. Maxwell's eyes close, and in the silence that follows, he finally speaks without fear. I missed her for so long, I forgot how to hold anything warm. Mariam's voice is gentle. But you didn't forget how to hold them. He opens his eyes. They are both watching him. Noah, Hope, their hands in his. Mariam places hers beside them, not on top, beside, together. The house that was once built for silence now hums with quiet aliveness. Not noise, but life. A sacred, steady kind of love. The wind shifts. Not violently, not suddenly, just enough for the curtains to move. Enough for the light to change in the hallway. The house is different now, not because the floors creak or the glass fogs over in the mornings, but because of what it holds, what it dares to remember. There is laughter in the kitchen now, soft, layered, unforced, sometimes just a hum, sometimes the sound of crayons scribbling on wood, of little feet running, of Hope calling Papa from across the room without hesitation. She says it like she always knew how. Noah still doesn't speak much, but he touches now. He hugs, he leans into arms. He places his cheek against Maxwell's shoulder in the evenings and stays. That's his language now, touch. And every night, before sleep, he brings his spiral notebook to Mariam, and she writes whatever he gestures, simple things. Rain again. Papa smiled. Hope jumped. She doesn't correct his grammar. She just writes, because some sentences don't need fixing. They just need to be heard. The house breathes. It breathes when Maxwell wakes before the system, walks barefoot down the corridor, and opens the playroom door before the children knock. It breathes when Mariam plays music without asking permission. When Maxwell brings in fresh bread from the new bakery at the edge of the hill. When Hope sings quietly to the houseplants. when Noah folds paper into animals and leaves them on doorknobs like gifts. It breathes when they sit around the table at night, not just to eat, but to be. One Sunday, Maxwell does something unthinkable. He invites no one, but he opens the old dining room, the one Celeste loved, the one he locked the day after the funeral and never entered again. He cleans it, by hand. He doesn't call staff. He wipes the dust himself, finds the old cushions, unwraps the china, lays the tablecloth she stitched by hand, the one with gold leaves in the corner. He calls Mariam in. She doesn't say a word when she sees it. She just walks over and places a single candle in the center. That night, they all eat there. No speeches, no photographs, just the light flickering between them. Hope dances around the table when she's done eating. Maxwell watches her spin. She stops suddenly and walks to him, places her tiny hands on his knees. "Can I call her Mama now?" Maxwell swallows. His breath is unsteady. He looks at Mariam. She doesn't answer for him. She just watches. Maxwell kneels, holds Hope's hand. "Yes," he says. "If that's what your heart says, then yes." Hope turns and runs to Mariam. "Mama," and wraps both arms around her waist. Noah walks over slowly. He doesn't speak, but he does something he's never done before. He lifts Mariam's hand, places it over his heart, and nods. Maxwell lowers his head, not in sadness, in awe. Later that evening, when the children are asleep and the fire is low, Maxwell stands at the hallway window. Mariam joins him. They say nothing for a long while. Then he turns. "I still don't know everything about you." She smiles. "You know what matters." He nods. Then, carefully, he asks, "Will you stay?" "Not as a maid," she says. He blinks. "No, not as a maid." She nods. "As family, then." He breathes. "Yes." The next day, he tells the AI system to delete her job title. The house no longer recognizes her as staff, only as resident. That evening, Mariam dances again. Not alone. Hope dances beside her. Maxwell sits on the floor with Noah, clapping slowly in rhythm, offbeat and smiling. And somewhere, in the silence between their laughter and the shadows of candlelight, a voice not heard in years fills the house. Not from a speaker, not from memory, but from the very walls themselves. Celeste's lullaby. Because love, when invited, never leaves. It just waits for warmth to return. And in this house, it finally has, forever.